Howdy folks, welcome to week 9 for research methods. This week we're going to take a look at how to analyze your data and what you need to know to use statistics when working with your research. Now, there's not a whole lot we're going to go through here. I'm trying to keep it simple and straightforward. I've taught statistics in the past before and it often gets really overcomplicated. So what sections have we got for this week? We're going to first take a look at Jamovi and data entry. Most people tend to learn statistics with Excel or SPSS. We're going to be using Jamovi because it's a free software that you can use at home or anywhere you like. And it's actually pretty easy to work with for newer people. We're going to take a look at descriptives and graphs. So those are going to be your first look at your data points and how to deal with data that might be a little bit messed up. Then we're going to take a look at how to actually analyze data. The analyses we're going to be working with are just t-tests and correlations. Pretty straightforward. You may have learned those already in a different class. And finally, we'll take a look at how to put together research or a results section for a research paper. The results section, much like the methods section, is going to be almost a fill-in-the-blank type of writing. They're not too complicated, and they get more complicated with more complicated research questions, but for the purposes of this class, it should be a pretty simple bit of writing, probably not more than a page or so. Okay, so let's look at Jamovi and data entry. Where do we get Jamovi? How do we perform data entry? The majority of this topic is just going to be going online or using the program. So what we're going to look at is where to get Jamovi, how to download and install it, how to put your data into Jamovi, and whether or not you want to code your data. Then we'll take a look at sample data, some example data, and how to get that. We'll need that for the activities. And finally, how to save your work. So let's jump out of this PowerPoint. And I've already prepared here website that we can use. So to get Jamovi, Google Jamovi. You can go to the website. It's pretty straightforward. Hit download. I'd recommend you download the most recent solid version. This current version with the latest features may be a little bit buggy. I've taken the chance to already download that ahead of time, so it should pop up here. And in case you're not too familiar with installing stuff on your computer, we're going to work through that right now. If you already have Jamovi installed like I do, it may ask you, do you want to update? And I'll say yes. And so you can, like I said, for me, I already have this stuff, so it's going to first need to uninstall the original version that I had so we can install the newer version. If you ever have problems with your Jamovi, if it's breaking down, or if you just haven't used it in a while, it's always a good idea to do this, just update the Jamovi so they can work with the latest version. So hit finish, and now we're going to actually install it. This is where you'll be at if you've never installed Jamovi before on your computer. Install, pretty dang straightforward. Just kind of hit yes and next on everything. It shouldn't take too long. For a slower computer, maybe 5 to 20 minutes. But it shouldn't be too heavy of a burden, so it should work on most computers. I'm not sure if you're allowed to install Jamovi on the computers at school, on OTC computers, so that might be something to double check with the IT folks, or to give it a shot. You might be able to. Either way, this will run on just about anything, so if you really need to, you're more than welcome to go to the library and rent out or check out a laptop, install Jamovi there, do your work, and then return it. Usually that is totally free for OTC students, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Okay, so while this is working, I'm going to go ahead and, oh, is it done? Cool, it's done. And so to open it, I'm just going to hit start on my computer, or the start button, type in Jamovi, open it up. It'll take a moment to open up, and so it's going to give you kind of a blank slate here. Now, before we start inputting our data, let's go to the data that we're going to be working with this semester and show you how to get that. Here's a research survey. This is an example survey that I'm using for, or that we put together in the previous set of videos. We've got 3 questions, 1 categorical question and 2 continuous questions. So 1 independent variable, 1 dependent, and your confound variable. To analyze this data or to work with this data, you don't want to work with it in this format that Google gives you. Instead, we're going to click this button here, and then it'll ask you, do you want to make a spreadsheet for this? You'll say yes, and this is what the spreadsheet's going to look like. So how are we going to get this information into Jamovi? There's a couple things that we can do. You can select your data, hit Control C or copy it. You can also right click and copy, paste it in, and then go double click on the variable and change the name. So are you a boy or girl? I'm just going to call it gender. For this categorical variable, that's going to be a nominal variable. You can tell the little icon looks like 3 different groups. And the levels here, it's automatically going to fill in with all of the possible groups based off of what answers people gave. I'm going to copy the rest of these guys all in one go. Using Shift, paste it in. And now by default, it's going to assume that these are categorical variables, but we know that they're not. So this variable here should be continuous because it's someone's age. This variable here should be continuous because it is people's height. Now notice that when I change that to continuous, one of the data points here disappeared. If I hit Control Z, that's for Windows. A similar undo function should be available for Mac, but I don't know how to use Mac, so sorry. If the reason it disappeared is because this number actually has a space in it, and so it thinks it's a word. It's a different group. And there's a problem here. Someone entered their height as 5'5". Now we know that this variable is supposed to be age, and we know this next variable is supposed to be height in inches. Now because someone did this survey wrong, this 5'5" variable is troublesome. It disappears, it can't work as a continuous variable because it has a space in it. So what we can do is just go in our own heads, say, well, what is 5'5" in inches? Well, 5 times 12 is 60 plus 5, 65. I'm just going to change this data point to 65. Now, if you type it in here, this is actually going to rename the level. So that's not really what we want. You want to type it in down here by clicking there, and that changes the number there. Why would you want to rename the level? Well, we're going to see that here in a second. Let's say that you want to work with 10 different groups of plants. It can actually be easier to gather that data as numbers. And so you might have plants in their groups 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you can change the numbers to be maybe one plant is called an iris and another plant is called a dandelion. I misspelled that, but whatever. Another plant is called a weed. And so you could name the groups. You can give them names that pop up over here, but they're still called 1, 2, and 3. Why would you do that? Well, there's a couple different reasons in terms of data analysis and working with your data. If, for example, you are working with 4 or 5 different groups and you want to put those groups together, having those groups be named numbers with these titles actually makes that easier. But this is not required, and if that's something that pops up for you, feel free to send me an email and I can work with you over Zoom to get that data corrected for you. For now, I'm going to ahead and delete this so we can stick with the basic information we're working with. You may notice some people also have not given us all the data. They didn't answer the height question, so if you want, you can delete their information. And other people, let's say we want to look at the height or age differences between males and females, and someone happened to answer transgender. Now that isn't necessarily a bad thing if you want to look at people who are transgender. But if you just want to look at males and females, that might pose a problem for your analysis. And there's nothing wrong with just deleting their data so that we can work with a cleaner set of data. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with being a transgender person, but in this case, if you are not interested in working with that data, or there's not enough data from transgender people to analyze, you might just get rid of it, and there are other ways to work with that data, or just kind of black it out for a second, but they're a little bit more complicated. Something like this may happen if you ask people to participate in your study and they give weird alternative answers for things that you weren't anticipating. Like if you're asking, okay, do you like to play sports? And you have 10 people who play soccer and 10 people who play baseball, but you have 3 people who like to play racquetball. that's a weird smaller group that you really can't work with right now because there's not enough data, so you might delete that group too. Okay, so we've gone ahead and put the data in. What else do we need to do to get this in working order? Well, you can save your data by going to these little bars here. I'm going to save. And if it's the first time you've worked with a set of data, it's going to ask you, how do you want to save it? You can give it a name like my data about height. And then you can click on browse to open up this block here and say, where do you want to put it? I want to install it and save it in my OneDrive, research methods, and the data type is going to be a Jamovi file, which is a .omv. Hit save. And so then, if I go open up my research methods folder, there's my data for stuff in the research methods folder. There it is, Jamovi data, my data about height. Here's all the PowerPoints, stuff that I've used for this class so far. You can open it up. And it's blank. Why might it be blank? Probably because I was still working with it in this window over here. So let's go ahead and hit save, close it, and open it again. And it's still blank. That's weird. Well, in this situation, we could copy and paste that information back in there again.